Namaskar and welcome to Daily Global Insights, episode 282. A shout out to our viewers to like this program so it can reach its maximum potential. Today is Tuesday, November the 23rd, and here are the main points. But before we go there, let's welcome our co-host, Sridhar Chityalaji. Sridharji, Namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel, sir.
Namaskar, good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everybody. Looking forward to another wonderful day.
Thank you, sir. And viewers, regretfully, we could not do yesterday's program because of some technical difficulties. But today we are back and roaring. And the first news item that we're going to go over is Philippines is set to resume the supply to its troops in South China Sea after blockade by Chinese Coast Guard. Wow, now they are beginning to do blockades. Not good. Nasty business, sir.
Well, I think that you will see that they exert their threat. They demonstrate they are capable, then they come back to the meeting, and then they basically say, we're not bullies, we can work with you and, work with us. So it is a subtle way of exerting pressure and then demanding and extracting what they believe they want. This seems to be the common pattern. I don't know whether China is ever a trustworthy nation. It's a nation that has any credibility. And why people continue to, especially Western democratic nations, to deal with it is beyond comprehension.
And Xi quotes ASEAN at summit as Duterte hits out over the South China Sea and says ready to sign ASEAN's nuclear arms free zone treaty. China, on the contrary, continues to bully Bhutan, risking South Asian stability. So there are two stories. Duterte is, of course, Philippines. We talked about that. So touch upon the nuclear arms free zone treaty, and then we'll talk about Bhutan.
Well, I think the pattern is consistent. So we started with the Philippine boats being Filipino boats being blocked. These are the boats which we send supplies to their armed forces, which are guarding the Scarsbury Shoals and the other areas, making sure that the fishermen can, easily navigate and conduct their regular business. Then what happens? Xi turns up at the ASEAN online summit and then says, "Rah, rah, rah, we are all going to be here. I promise you in South China Sea, I will not be bullying small nations. And I'll also make sure that there is a nuclear free treaty, which means that I will not exert any nuclear options. And I'll also make sure my dear friend from North Korea doesn't, fly missiles into South China and the other areas." This is what he says. And then for which, people take it with a pinch of salt and let's see what comes out of it. So these are the two stories this is the one story with regard to the bullying that happens, plus then this Xi quoting the ASEAN. There's a reason why he's quoting the ASEAN, because his CPTPP membership go for a toss if any of these guys object to the nomination. Then he goes to, then we have a problem in Bhutan, where he tries to, try to sign a deal and give them some grant. Then slowly begins to grab territory, and Bhutan cannot defend itself. And why Bhutan? Because Doklam and the Chicken Next Point, as well as access to East, is within his radar. So he has now armed himself, just as what he did in Nepal is trying to do in Bhutan. But Bhutan is far more strategic to him because that probably helps to achieve his Himalayan agenda, which is one of the reasons why India is keeping a very close eye as to what's happening there.
And U.S. Admiral calls for more Indo-Pacific drills to face China threat. Sridharji, there have been a series of drills, whether you talk about Arabian Sea or in the South China Sea, and India has also participated in some, France, Britain, and so on. So there's a lot of stuff happening in this area and region. What more drills can the Quad or perhaps Quad plus UK and France do to be like an effective deterrent?
I think in a couple of 3 sessions ago, we said it's a hodgepodge and looks like a jamboree of partnerships and activities. What was present during the old Trump regime in concert with Mr. Abe and Scott Morrison and Mr. Modi at the helm. There was coordinated and consistent set of activities going on with closely knit programs across the four navies, along with the supported by the air mission or air missions from the carriers. Now that has basically stopped. You have either the US ships going around or the French ships going around. Remember, France and India do exercises in the Indian Ocean and probably parts of the Pacific Ocean. They call it Indo-Pacific, more primarily targeted in Indian Ocean. Australia and India does exercises in Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean because both have a lot of strategic interest. But who covers East China Sea? Who covers Taiwan Strait? Who covers South China Sea, etc.? Japan has been fairly absent. There were US and Japanese special forces conducting operations. Japan itself was surrounded by the Russians in the north and the Chinese in the south, and less said the better about the incursions that has consistently been going on in the Taiwan Strait. So I think what this US general is saying is absolutely correct. We need consistent and coordinated efforts going on and must go on around this. AUKUS remains a deal where Australia gets the UK submarines. But is there a AUKUS mission that has happened? No.
And China downgrades its diplomatic ties with Lithuania, while the United States and Taiwan are expected to meet next week for further expanding economic ties. Sridharji, this is something that we expected all along, didn't we?
Yes, we did, and I think that China is playing to the playbook, which is namely to say, I'll cut off the diplomatic ties and I'll reduce this stuff. This is what they'll threaten the Lithuania, Poland, any of the countries, EU, etc. Remains to be seen what they do, whether it has any material impact.
And was Kurt Campbell watching DGI last Thursday? Perhaps he was. He sees India as the fulcrum in the Indo-Pacific strategy with Vietnam and our next Quad meeting planned for March 2022. He was speaking at a think tank last Friday. Wow. Good endorsement, Sridharji. I hope your words come true.
I mean, well, on Friday, Kurt Campbell has never spoken about Quad. Thursday, we kind of gave a little bit of a roast or a toast. Then, surprise. I mean, people don't. There's a very good set of audience we have for DGI. Probably some of them from policymakers watching the show from Washington D.C. So therefore, I mean, we have that data to establish our point. Plus, of course, people giving feedback, etc., from through informal channels. But lo and behold, out of nowhere, Kurt Campbell comes out and says, India will be the fulcrum point and the key strategic player as we move into Indo-Pacific Sea. And he adds Vietnam to it, which is namely Indo-Vietnam will be very close collaboration. And by the way, we do have Quad, and we're going to have the next meeting of Quad in March 2022. When was the last meeting of Quad? We had one in March 2021. Then we had one recently in October where we talked about vaccines. We never talked about the navigation and strategic deterrence in the main objective with which Quad was formed. Strategic deterrent around maintaining open seas, not only in Indo-Pacific, South China Sea, East China Sea, Taiwan Strait, etc.
And Vietnam's Prime Minister visits Japan, and with him a delegation of 50 leaders to broaden trade and security cooperation. So you just touched upon Vietnam, and lo and behold, we have something happening in Vietnam with Vietnam and Japan.
Vietnam and Japan are coming together, and I think they're planning to broaden the areas of cooperation. Japan is trying to find ways by which it can expand its footprint in the near zone. That includes Taiwan, that includes Vietnam, that includes Thailand, that includes India, etc., shifting away its reliance on China.
And Europe is riveting with agitations. I think Europe is wrestling with agitations opposing vaccine mandates. Holland, Germany, Austria are some of the countries that are facing this problem. On the contrary, COVID cases have been on the rise across Europe. Siddharji, every time the gate is opened, something happens, and again you go into this lockdown mode. So, if you think about it as like a time-bound function, time series function, you are going to have these spikes, but those spikes should slowly die down over a period of time, I would expect. Do you see the same patterns? Sir? Because in fact, the second wave was higher than the first wave, third wave, fourth wave. Now I think is this a fifth wave?
Europe is in the fourth wave, and your observations of the sine curve series seems very consistent. The unfortunate truth is nobody wants to get behind the truth. And there's been no investigations, there's been no coordinated efforts. These cases come, these cases grow. Austria has high rise, Germany has high cases. In fact, when you take a look, probably we'll share it tomorrow. The top 10 nations in the world which most active cases, you will find 7 out of the 10 are in Europe. Russia, Poland, then you have Austria, Holland, Germany, United Kingdom, Turkey. All these nations, I've included Turkey because it's part of the NATO, so you can include them in that cluster. High incidence of deaths and very high active cases. So what do they do when you have high active cases? You basically, you say we'll shut down, and everybody says you shut down, nothing achieves. Then you say vaccination, we are vaccinated, nothing is achieved. Then you again basically are establishing curbs. Basically, you have a surreptitious agenda. So people are rebelling against this whole shutdown.
And German coalition deal is set to be announced and an imminent government formation 2 months after the election. This would mark the end of the Angela Merkel era, isn't it, Sridharji?
End of Angela Merkel era, strange coordination. You have, conservatives, you have Green, and then you have the Social Democrats all forming a government. Let's hope that it augurs well and they begin to look more Eurocentric rather than reliant on the Chinese, which was Angela Merkel. And later she herself acknowledged that she regrets her decisions on China.
And US sends patrol boats to Ukraine amid tensions with Korea. Kremlin accuses the West of artificially whipping up Ukraine tension. Sridharji, there seems to be like a one buildup versus another buildup. Russia was trying to say that because US put troops in Ukraine, therefore we are building up troops on the other side. Who started building their troops, sir? But in defense in the defense of US, when Russia occupied Crimea, I think that's when the troop buildup happened on Ukraine border, isn't it?
The troop buildup has been on and off with regard to Ukraine. The annexation of Crimea, which Ukraine objected to, resulted in a tremendous amount of tensions with potential invasion that was thwarted. To some extent, Angela Merkel is to be given responsibility or Angela Merkel has to be given due credit for working with Vladimir, who is, they have a very close rapport to diffuse that specific tension. But having done that, you also had this Ukrainian plane being shot down, and there was this question around, who was responsible, whether it is the Russian missile, etc. So the tensions have prevailed quite consistently between Russia and Ukraine. And then you had when the new regime took over, and then there was Trump and Vladimir trying to keep stuff calm, and they never interfered in each other's affairs. Things went on. Then there was a cooked up issue around this Russian interference that turns out to be the other way. But then there came the Biden administration. They said they are going to give impetus to NATO and started to conduct exercises. It's almost like waking up a sleeping giant. They woke up and Vladimir got up. Up until that point of time, there was even very somber discussions between Russia and China. And now we have brought Russia and China closer, not only in that waters, but also in the broader Alaska, Pacific, the broader Japanese or East China Sea, and then right into Afghanistan. You are finding this new strange bedfellows, which is namely Russia and China, sir. So I think some of these geopolitical decisions people can't fathom in terms of the rationality or the irrationality, but then these things pop up.
There's no let up in the Belarus border tensions, with more nations urging the European Union to intervene. Poland's prime minister says Belarus will use Afghan refugees as a blackmailing point in its border to secure its rights. Sir, a little bit of context here. What is the importance of Belarus to the Western Europe?
The importance of Belarus to Western Europe is on two significant fronts. One is the gas pipelines flow through Belarus into the Western Europe, especially the Russian. So if there's anything is done, if they choose to shut off those pipes, there's no gas going from Russia. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is that they're also a gateway point with borders that they share with Lithuania, Poland, and other places, potentially creating a gateway because Turkey and Belarus has a seamless air traffic, and Turkey seems to be overzealous in dumping refugees from be it Afghanistan or Syria or from even as far-flung corners as Somalia. So the story is that these refugees come in Belarus and make their way into the forest and into the European border. So you have Belarus playing a significant part in that on those two strategic fronts. And even worse, is that the Russians and Belarus work very closely together. And you saw that the Russian planes coming in and conducting exercise on the Belarus border, and especially with Poland, and causing alarm bells going, and Poland saying, NATO, you're keeping quiet, and these guys are all over the place. So you have both from a security point of view, as well as from a supplies point of view, Belarus is trying to extract its piece of flesh.
India's second quarter GDP has been pegged at 8.1%, and the fiscal year 22 growth now seen in the range of 9.3 to 9.6%, with fully 42% of the population vaccinated. That is the first and the second dose. Indian exports rose 55.13% to US 223.54 billion, while import for the same period rose 78.16% to US 331.39 billion, leaving a deficit of $97.85 billion. Indian exports are on target to cross close to 400 billion. Sridharji, your thoughts on India's numbers? Even though exports are up, the imports are also significantly up, sir.
India is a net importer, sir. Once upon a time that imports used to be substantive. The two concepts have helped India to reduce the amount of deficit. One is obviously the indigenization of, or what you call as the PLI programs or Make in India programs, which has done a tremendous amount of import substitution. Favorable oil prices has cut significantly into the duties and the exchange rate issues that helped. You remember, oil was around 46. It was even at one point of time, it was $30 a barrel. It went into 46. Now, it is around, today it's very good. It's around $76, $77. In the previous, it had gone up to $85. So higher the energy prices, you're going to have the offset coming on the import side of the Indian bill. But the fact that they are trying to continue to build the exports means that they can manage the trade deficit and trade imbalance fairly well. One thing also we have to take into account just by looking at the numbers, that factor is that India today has a $650 billion or $640 billion reserve. So in other words, in the event of an adversity, that it will be able to sustain imports, even with any disruption in exports or any disruption in other factors, that it will be able to withstand. This is what you achieve with a combination of reserves, notwithstanding the fact you do have some imbalance in the export-import numbers.
Sridharji, just for the context, most people in India and perhaps even the media in India, they talk as if the crude is being always purchased at spot, which means there are daily prices. And really, what we talk about when we quote a number, it's a crude futures for a certain date. Now, I want to jog your memory back to the point when India disengaged itself from Iran and hitched its wagon to United States. And the United States said that we will hold your refined product, refined or crude, I don't remember which one, and you can draw it down from Saudi Arabia. Therefore, the distance was more or less the same. Now, was there a price guarantee that was also part of that deal, sir?
The price guarantee was part of the deal. Then there was also second most important element that was part of the deal. India will process the unrefined West Texas crude, Brent crude, and the process will be exported on behalf of United States to the nearby nations, which US exports to. This is how the trade between India and United States went up to $150 billion. And today the number is somewhere close to that, around 156, 157. As we speak, the U.S. What you call trade representative Kathleen Tai is in India. Now with Mr. Biden choking off his supply lines, he's now become an importer rather than an exporter. What that is going to do, that specific deal, whether India is substituting with someone else, remains to be seen. Remember, India substituted Saudi Arabia and United States substituted Saudi Arabia and became number 2 exporter of oil to India.
And is this the complete supplies for India, or was it like a significant portion? Any idea, sir? What's the percentage?
I think it's a good chunk of the portion that I won't say India balances itself with Iraq, with United States. It also gets from UAE. It also gets from other nations. So it has a very good balanced supply of crude from multitude of nations. I think India has learned a wise lesson, not to be reliant on one single nation or one single supplier. And as you rightly said, it does a lot of futures. At that point of time, India had done a deal with United States for strategic drawdown, but that's been nullified right now. That doesn't exist. So India does have a relationship with UAE to draw down and has some common storage capacity on the oil side, but it is not reliant on one single partner, by way of its what you call demand fulfillment. I think India still has some what you call with Iran has ability to also import from Iran, but it has reduced the amount, but it does have that ability with Iran as well. It has actually sourced oil from as far destinations as Caribbean to as proximus destinations on the African. The only reason why they're a little bit concerned about the African side is the piracy. Yeah, the other types of issues. Yeah.
And India invites global investors to join its energy transitional journey at the Dubai Expo Meet. Indian government to exceed fiscal year 22 tax collection target. Exports of processed food products and agriculture grows by 14.7%. That's impressive, Sridharji.
Well, you remember UP and Gujarat became 2 states where they did a collaboration with Italy and a couple of other nations to produce processed food like tomatoes and so on, and not only for domestic consumption, but also for export purposes. So very clearly in that specific segment. I don't know about Karnataka, but clearly I know UP and in Gujarat they had done that. Of course, Maharashtra with its present issues, it seems to be at a standstill. And the processing industry taking off along those lines augurs well for the agricultural and food processing industry for India, sir.
And US Trade Representative Catherine Tai to focus on market access and revival of key trade areas. Sridharji, Catherine Tai hasn't been quite that much in the limelight as the Republican equivalent, isn't it?
Has not been, and she has had a visit to China with an intent whether she can normalize the ties. Then she has had a visit to ASEAN nations to see whether that can be energized, especially within the context of CPTPP. US has declined to join that trade group, notwithstanding the fact there is tremendous amount of wooing going on. She is also likely to make her visit to Taiwan to expand trade. And obviously, India is the area where they are trying to look to. I have to admit, it's a very pleasant surprise that the Biden administration is making all the right noises and attempting to do all the right things as far as India is concerned in a strategic context, be it trade, be it vaccines, be it the diplomacy around the supply of equipment, especially around the defense equipment that India needs, be it surveillance aircraft, be it the drones that India acquired. So India seems to be on in pretty good books. And then you had the Kurt Campbell statement. Now Kathleen Tai going there and saying we want to expand a trade cooperation between United States and India. So contrary to the negative, the Biden administration seems to be making all the right things as far as from trade to security is concerned. My pea in the bonnet is around the Quad, which is where they should have really focused, and which is very important deterrent for the open Indo-Pacific as well as the open navigation, and that's where the maximum amount of trouble is going to come. But it's good she's making a way.
And amid India-China tension, China deploys long-range strategic bomber close to the line of actual control. Indian Army will stand up to all forms of threats, asserts Army's Vice Chief of Staff. This saber rattling is now in its 15th, 18th month, Sridharji?
It goes on. It never stops. Countless. Why 15? It just is every other day you have. This is Mr. Rajnath Singh. If not Rajnath Singh, it is either the Deputy Chief of Staff, or it is Chief of the Armed Services, or it is the Chief of Mr. Bipin Rawat. Someone is making. But the fact that they continue to make the noise, they continue to keep this rumbling going on, is one thing which is very good news. In fact, I forgot to also, we should mention that the Ministry for External Affairs has stated that the behavior of China, especially along LAC, and trying to preserve their view of the status quo has not been the way China has historically behaved, is a statement that he has made. So it is a cause for concern, and I hope something is not going to break out. So, but all the rhetoric and all the stuff that is going on seems to point out both nations are almost at, handshaking distance. If something slips, I think we are in for some kind of a combat.
All Rafale jets to be delivered by the end of April, says French envoy. Indian authorities seize containers carrying radioactive material from Pakistan to China in Indian waters. Sridharji, they are supposed to be only in international waters whenever they are, taking freighting cargo. How did they wade into Indian waters, Sridharji?
Well, it's an interesting, first and foremost, how did they wade? These things, when you have stealth activity and when the crew doesn't know what exactly transpires, in this navigation, you occasionally, couple of times, you get caught. And in this instance, And many occasions, you don't get caught, you slip. Why you slip? Because there's not enough investigation, supervision, and validation of the cargo is done. It's obviously people are scouting for radioactive material. It's very, very alarming that this has been detected. And why is it going from Pakistan to China is the other bigger question. I think more details will come out in due course.
And Democrats take victory lap on Biden's spending plan as Pelosi downplays the looming Senate changes. Climate accord and amnesty illegals stop the numbers, with childcare credits becoming backdoor entry for welfare payments without work. Are these for the illegal immigrants or for the others, Sridharji?
There are three essential elements to this package. $550 billion is for the climate. You will see some of these things, pilfering its way into amnesty. 550 billion. Can you believe 550 billion? Astronomical number. Then you have 440 billion to some extent of that number for this child care credits. What they see here is that what is considered as a tax offset, plus what is also considered as minimum payments, becoming a mandated welfare payment. That means every child, it doesn't matter, it's not for only COVID, but it is going to be a mandated payment that is getting in. So people don't need to work and you get it. You have this social security structure in Australia and probably parts of Europe. You have this, you have 4 children, you get paid, once you pass a specific, test, what you call the income test. So what people are afraid of is that this has become now a mandated kind of a welfare payment. Then stuck within this bill, which we are looking into, is almost an amnesty for close to somewhere between 4 to 4.6 million out of the 8 or 8.5 million. Total is 11, but there's a 8.5 million illegals who are stuck in this country. And this is how the DACA program came in. So we are analyzing all this. There's one other provision which has been factored in that is likely to take a cut. This is this around, paid leave and paid welfare during a specific periods, and that is likely to take a hit when it goes to the Senate. People like Kirsten as well as Manchin are not supportive of that. So it remains to be seen how this package and what size this package gets in. But within the package, you have these elements. That's how progressives allowed the bill to pass through and allowed the infrastructure bill to pass through. But this has to go back to the House if the Senate doesn't support and trims it further. That's the battle that we can watch after the Thanksgiving.
And Senate adjourns for Thanksgiving after impasse over the defense bill and with Build Back Better bill also delayed. Now, Texas Attorney General places the blame on Biden administration as yet another caravan makes its way towards the border. Sridharji, I thought this was stopped at the south of Mexico border.
No, they're coming. They keep coming. So there's the next big caravan is coming. There was also, I don't know, over the weekend, a very small number, about 200 people were able to sneak into get into the United States across, crossing the border. And the rationale that has been given is that, there's not enough enforcement people to stop them. And they find gaps and holes and they make the way. But this big caravan is going to be a worry. And overarchingly, what you are seeing is the greatest illegal immigration that is making its way into this country in a very narrow window of time. By the time we finish 2021, we could be having close to 2 million people who would have navigated, besides about 1.5 or 1.6 million apprehended and sent back. Okay, so therefore you have this gigantic number that is sitting in front of us, and then you have about what they call, whichever way you look at it, between 9 and 11 million already in this country who are crying for normalization of their status. So this is going to be a flood. Many of them don't have the ability to, they all have to be trained, educated, blah, blah, blah. So it is going to have a great burden on top of a debt and deficit that is soaring its way.
And mass looting moves to San Francisco Bay suburbs for a second straight night on Saturday. At least 5 dead and 40 injured by a driver driving through Christmas parade in Wisconsin. Kyle Rittenhouse gives first interview and says the case has nothing to do with race, while marches and protests galore across United States and both parties are taking up opposite positions. Sridharji, Kyle Rittenhouse was 17 years old when this thing happened. The judgment is out. A jury has spoken. Why is the country not willing to move on?
The country refuses to move on. It acts on emotions. It doesn't act on facts. Remember O.J. Simpson's case? If you all remember O.J. Simpson's case, lo and behold, they cried and cried and cried, and basically that guy, the truth eventually came out, or his behavior eventually came out, and you know what the story is. The same here with Kyle Rittenhouse. He said it's a self-defense. It's nothing to do. If you're attacked, you're going to defend yourself. So the verdict was passed. Not satisfied. So what does Mr. Nadler, Ralph Nadler says? Department of Justice now must intervene and file a manslaughter case against Kyle Rittenhouse. So this is what they're saying. They must file a case. And then these fellows think that anything, and the progressives calls, if he's they have a word, white supremacist. So if you are not if any incident like this happens, you happen to be the other side. Some big media channels, I don't want to mention the names, everybody knows, haven't taken their position on this, to the extent that even both sides of the communities are saying, if media can stop the rhetoric, I think life can go on. But right now we are run by we have an administration which has taken a stand not just on one front, but across multitude of fronts. Critical race theory. Okay, then you have the reparations. Then you have payments to illegals. Then you have discriminated or what you call delineated view of dispensation of aid, which we have discussed around, especially loans as well as the land loans efforts that translated into some parts of some people getting more benefit, some people getting less benefit. Then you have the LGTB movement, etc. So you have a whole set of activities. Oh, then you have the crime rates, the defund police movement. Okay, so then you have this new rule that is prevalent, and you can see in California, people are going to Nordstrom and looting. It's not only in I forget the name of the street in downtown San Francisco.
The looting happened in a suburb called Walnut Creek, Sridharji.
Yeah, Walnut Creek, as well as it's now slipped to Oakland. The Oakland suburbs. It has moved to Oakland suburbs. So when you look at all this, this looting that goes on, where they just loot and go, and the goods are being sold on the side streets around the Bay Area, it just defies logic in terms of, where is the law enforcement? Where is the law? Nobody wants to touch it because you have a government which seems to be taking a very specific view on these positions. That's why we have this chaos.
And drone strike on US airbase. Is this Iran's retaliation for Israeli airstrikes, Sridharji?
Yes. The Iraq is basically stating that, so Iran is stating that, hey, I will do what I think I need to do by using drones. And that's exactly what they have done. They have dared. Information, again, is suppressed. We're probably one of the few people, even talking about this. There is no mainstream coverage. What exactly is the damage? We don't know. And they basically is the first daring attempt, but there has been an attack. There has been attempts which have been thwarted, which we have covered in DGI, but this attack seems to have happened. Whether it caused any damage, we'll report as time passes by. But basically, you know that they do not dare to act against Israel. If Israel does something, they do something on Israel, they get disproportionate, what you call gift from the
Response. Yeah.
Israelis, from the Israelis. So they try and do it this way. Very, very unfortunate, sir.
And the United Kingdom is going to name the entirety of Hamas as a terrorist organization. Sridharji, another interesting news that is quietly coming out of United Kingdom is that they have passed their citizenship law. They've tweaked it to basically strip somebody of the citizenship. This happened in the case of a girl who went to Syria and fight on behalf of the ISIS, whatever the other things that were happening. And now United Kingdom has tweaked its law that they can actually make somebody a non-citizen. He could be born in UK, could be fifth generation, whatever, it doesn't matter. Looks like there is a new clause that if you do things that are not expected, then you could be stripped of your citizenship.
Well, it looks, I think that's a very good attempt. I think Australia has a similar kind of a policy. I won't be surprised if Singapore has something similar, but it hasn't happened. And Australia has in UK, I'm glad that it is coming up. UK has real major challenges. Of course, Europe has equally greater challenges. It remains to be seen whether they would follow something similar. But this is a very important announcement. It's not been announced by United States, but UK has announced they want to make the entire Hamas as a terrorist organization.
And let's take a quick look at markets. US stocks started out being high because of the reappointment of Jerome Powell, but looks like it has given up its gains at the end of the day.
It has given most of its gains. In fact, almost all of it. It was up 300 points, rah. Then suddenly it said, okay, policy continuation, normalization. Lael Brainard is the progressive is now the vice chair for the Fed, but will not have a material impact. So we're going to have a continuation of the same policies and possibly 2 rate hikes coming end of next year, which is what the original promised Jerome Powell's position. And you saw the bond yields kind of going up. It's around crossed the 1.6%. It even went to 1.67%. The good news amongst all this is that the oil prices have dipped not because of any sudden drop in demand, but there is a fear that there's a global shutdown is coming, especially in Europe. So there's good news that the oil is around the $71, $76 a barrel, slipping almost $10 in the last few days.
And for the year, the Dow is up 16.2%. Standard & Poor is up 26.6%, and the NASDAQ is up 24.59%. So, Sridharji, all around, this has been a banner year for stocks.
Banner year for the stocks today. As we finished the day, NASDAQ was down about 1.3%. But good news is Thanksgiving and Christmas and Santa Claus are coming. So usually we have a Santa Claus rally. So generally, we finish the year even slightly higher than where we are, so which makes it even a much stronger and wonderful year for 2021 as we predicted. The only only dark cloud is the cryptos fell contrary to my predictions. They're below 60,000 right now, but I'm optimistic that we'll get past 60,000 again and 65,000 as we close out the year. So these are the numbers as far as the markets go.
End of the year is still 30 plus days away, sir, and probably 25 working days. So we'll wait and see how it goes. Thanks once again for joining, viewers. And do please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Sridharji, as always, a pleasure. And I'll see you tomorrow again. Same time, same place. And namaskar.
Namaskar. Thank you so much. And we're excited to be back again.